Okay, so this past week, maybe not the entire week, but at least like some of the past few days, there's been this theme that I have noticed in my life. And I'll talk about like the big stuff of my life, like work, interacting with my family and whatnot. Just in terms of like the media I've consumed this week or been working on, and some of the videos that I've watched on YouTube have been randomly recommended to me. There is this core theme of medium. And, you know, the inherent advantages that one medium might have over another versus the disadvantages it'll have compared to another, about the nature of adaptation and how adaptation is essentially translation from one medium to another, and is it even something that you need to do? Should it something be very faithful as an adaptation? It's like, and even faithfulness in an adaptation, is that faithfulness to the story, like you gotta go like beat for beat, character for character, or is it more about adapting the idea? And even if there are some differences to the story and some differences to the characters, if you can get the tone and the vibe and the themes, is that what's good? Earlier today, I finished playing Alan Wake. I have been playing it with Clay for about a couple weeks or so, you know, off and on when our schedules work out. The game's pretty short. It's about 12, 13 hours, maybe even shorter than that. I have no idea what our time actually is. I don't know, maybe check it tomorrow, but I'll be honest, I don't think I really care enough to, but again, it's pretty short. The basic plot of this game, and I will be going into full spoilers for... I don't have notes. I wanted to do notes like for something on Alan Wake and for Totono, but I just feel I want to talk about this while it's kind of all in my head. It's kind of like the Fata Morgana video earlier this week. This is a no-note ramble. But full spoilers for Totono, Alan Wake, Doki Literature Club. I feel like I'm probably going to be talking about the three of those throughout this. I don't know if it's really spoilers for Raya and the Last Dragon, but if I'm talking about medium, I'm probably going to bring it up at some point too. But Alan Wake is a story about a writer who has severe writer's block. And he and his wife go to this town in the Pacific Northwest, because of course it's in the Pacific Northwest, called Bright Falls. And while there is this incident where his wife goes missing. She falls in the lake. Alan jumps in after her, and then he wakes up a week later with no memory of what happened in the past 7 days. But he keeps finding these pages of a manuscript that he supposedly wrote. And the things that he wrote in the manuscript are starting to happen in Bright Falls. And as you are playing the game, you can collect these pages, and they'll just be wherever the hell around town. You pick one up, and there'll just be narration of, you know, the darkness was trying to find the writer. It needed him for his power, but blah, 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 blah. Or it'll be like, Barry. Barry's the best character in the game. By the way, I love Barry. Barry's his agent. Like, you know, this is what Barry was doing. That, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, talking about all the other characters. And very often, you'll just read a page, and sometimes it'll be like, oh, okay, this is something that just happened, and I'm getting a little bit more context. Often, it's shit that hasn't happened yet, and so you, the player, and kind of assuming Alan, the character as well, although he doesn't often act on it, will be, this is stuff that is going to happen later in the story, which I find really cool, and, like, it's such a cool idea! I'm someone who loves to write. I love coming up with a story. I hate dealing with writer's block. And so, the idea of reading a story... I mean, I'll be honest, the idea of writing a story and coming to life is fucking terrifying and awful. No. It's one of the things I'm not really going to go on a full thing about Recreators. Recreators, I feel like, is an anime with a really cool idea. I remember there were a lot of points where I was like, I don't know if I'm crazy about the execution here, And there was some shit at the end game. I was like, this is a really stupid idea. this is something that a group of like in story, like, you mean to tell me that these 10 characters are all like writers at the top of their field, and this was their plan? It took me 5 seconds for me to figure out exactly why this plan would fail, and none of them came to that conclusion. What? Anyways, there is a scene in that story that I absolutely love, and it's when a character is confronting his author, and the author is saying everything that the character is saying at the exact same time. She's like, I know you so well. It's the best scene in the show. Again, I feel like for all its strengths and its flaws, that scene alone, and the recap episode is genuinely amazing. It's like an Ember Island Players kind of recap episode, justifies the entire show's existence. Anyways, I'm sorry, I went on a tangent. As I was playing through Alan Wake, I thought to myself, why is this a game? It's not that it's a bad game. It's an action game, and I think the combat is fine. You're fighting these dark creatures, which it's people possessed by darkness, and then there's also inanimate objects that will start flying at you and do way too much damage, and it's kind of great. That are possessed by this dark presence. You have to shine a flashlight on them, and it essentially destroys their defenses. Like, the light burns that away, and then you got your guns and you can shoot them, and there's no melee weapon. And I just think there should be a melee weapon. It's weird that there's not. You should be able to bonk something with the flashlight. But anyways, I think the actual action game and walking around and exploring Bright Falls is fine. It's not amazing. And I look at this and I just think to myself, as much as I love the story, and I really, really did, it was why I really want to finish this game. I'm looking forward to playing Alan Wake 2 at some point. I know I got to play Control in the middle. Kind of looking forward to that too. How much more would I like this if I was reading it? If I was reading a story about a writer who is an unreliable narrator because of, that week where he was out and he doesn't know what the hell is going on. He doesn't know if what's going on right now is real, if he's hallucinating. There's a theory that, sorry, brain went blank for a second. I guess I had my own little Alan Wake. Instead of 7 days, it was 7 seconds. If that was actually a 7-second pause, that'd be kind of wild. What was I trying to say? Fuck. Let me try that again. If I was reading a book about a writer who is an unreliable narrator because of these gaps in his memory, because he is not sure if what is happening is actually happening. He could be dreaming. He could be hallucinating. There's a doctor character that says, Alan, your wife died years ago. And this whole thing about you being the writer and the darkness took her. That's your coping mechanism, and I'm glad you have one, but we kind of need you back in reality. You need to take your meds. You're going to be okay. But the first step is acknowledging that this is not real. And, yeah, that's interesting. That's something to keep in mind. It's one of the things I love about Perfect Blue is I have no idea how much of Perfect Blue is actually happening, and I think most of it isn't. But if I could read this, and as Alan is wandering around the town, he finds a manuscript page, and it's just, it's the narration, it's the dialogue, and then later on in the book, you get to that exact moment, because in the game, you get to this moment, and there will be the dialogue, but not the description. If I get to read this exact, moment, word for word, line for line, later in the book, that feels so, mind-bending. House of Leaves. That's something else I'm probably going to be talking about and spoiling, because holy shit, Medium and House of Leaves. I'm saying, it's that feels like some weird House of Leaves shit. And that sounds so cool. It's so interesting. And I know the Dark Tower dabbles in that, at least to some degree, because I know the opening line of the Dark Tower, the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed, is a phrase that appears several times throughout the Dark Tower. I know Stephen King appears as a character in the Dark Tower at some point, because why the hell not? I could be wrong. I never actually finished the series, but I believe the final line, I can't say the last book because it's not technically the last book anymore, because now there's an 8th book that takes place before book 7. But I believe the final line of what was intended to be the final book is also the man in black fled across the desert and the gunslinger followed. So that at least does a little bit of kind of what I'm talking about. But as I'm playing Alan Wake, you know, we're getting these manuscript pages, I am thinking the game, part of the game, is fine. The story and the ideas are amazing. Would this have been better served as a book? Or, like, I think as a TV show as well. Like, it could have worked really well, but, like, I don't know. A book and just reading what is happening, like, okay, this is something that's going to happen later in the book, and then you just get that whole moment. It's like, oh, so Alan, like, the character wrote the book I'm currently reading. Huh? Which also is, you could do some really neat shit with that. Again, shout out House of Leaves, where, like, you are holding this physical book. Maybe it is even called Departure, because that's the name of the manuscript, like, by Alan Wake, and Alan is a character in the story and all that. Like, that's so cool! And I feel like the game is good, but it feels like a missed opportunity, because I think in a different medium, it would have went from good, I enjoyed it, and I want to see, you know, where else the series goes, to this is phenomenal. So I guess I'll go and talk about House of Leaves, like, for a little bit. I disagree with the sentiment that House of Leaves is unadaptable, but I think there's only one... there's a few reasons for that. And I'll say, number one, it's because the Novidson record, which is the main part of House of Leaves, I think you can adapt that. I think you could pretty easily adapt the story of the Novidson record, but obviously a lot would be lost in translation when it comes to Zampano and, like, his actual writings and his footnotes. I think you could still include Johnny. You would probably use Johnny as, like, a framing device of him, you know, reading the Novidson record, the story of the Novidson record, and then every now and then it'll just cut to Johnny doing whatever the hell, like, how it works in his footnotes, where in some of the footnotes it's like, yeah, you know, I tried to find this thing but didn't exist, or, like, you know, this is what I think is what Zampano was doing. And then, you know, you'll get the really long footnotes that's just whatever the hell Johnny was doing that day, or whatever the hell he was thinking about that day. I could just imagine, like, you're watching this intense scene of what's going on in the house, and then it just cuts to Johnny and Johnny's day, and it has nothing to do with anything, and then it goes right back to the house, because that's how it feels reading House of Leaves. You can adapt that, but I think to get the true experience of House of Leaves, it does have to be a written medium and a visual medium at the same time. Like, the reason I say I don't think it's unadaptable is I think it could work really well as a VN. You could still have the house in blue. You could still have Minotaur in red and crossed out. You could still have the footnotes. You could still have all, like, the pictures and appendices. It's just, like, you click a button and then you can check, like, the appendices and whatnot. Maybe you'd have to do that for the footnotes. Maybe the footnotes just appear at the bottom of the page, which I think it probably could. It was like when they're climbing the staircases, and it goes, the text will literally say, like, down, down, down. Or, like, near the end of the book when Novidson is in the house, and then he's, like, climbing down the stairs, then he's climbing up the stairs, and the text is reflecting that. You can do that in a visual novel. I think you can adapt House of Leaves. I think that's the only other medium you could truly adapt the whole story into, though. And even then, you can make an argument that it still works best as a book. Like, being able to hold this thing in your hand, and it kind of hits a little bit harder. I think so. I've said before on this channel, like, I think I said it in my House of Leaves video last year, it was the first time in a long time I read a book just for pleasure, not for class, not like even listening to an audiobook. It's like, I just got to hold a fucking book in my hand and not put it down. And it felt great to have that like love and passion invigorated back in me. And the fact that it's House of Leaves, it feels really cool. Like the book, you know? But I do think it could work as a VN. So let me talk about visual novels for a second. I feel like if you're going to talk about Totono, you kind of have to talk about Doki Doki Literature Club because of how similar the two of them are. But make no mistake, the two of them are very different. I feel like Totono, at its core, is a story about visual novels. It is about what a VN is, particularly a dating sim. It is about, this is the kind of people who play dating sims. It's about the psychology of dating sims. It's about characters in a dating sim. And as it goes on, it becomes a work of horror, but still remains true to being about a visual novel. Doki Doki Literature Club is a work of horror first and foremost that does take advantage of its medium as a visual novel. I feel like the core tenet of DDLC, and before I say anything else, I do want to say I love Doki Doki Literature Club. Like, and if I say anything about it that sounds like I'm disparaging it, please understand, I love it. I think its core tenet is a character, or like a creator makes a work of fiction, and they make a character. And the character comes to life, understands that they are not real, the world they are in is not real, and they have their Disney princess moment, I want adventure in that great wide somewhere, or part of your world, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, I want to see what's out there, because what's in here ain't doing it for me anymore. But the reason it's not doing it for them anymore is because they've realized, I'm not meant to be happy in the world I'm in. That is not the decision my creator had for me. And trying to get out. Maybe not to take revenge on the creator, but they want to get out or find their own source of happiness. And so Monica falls in love with the player. But again, I think the core idea would be, this character falls in love with the audience member, or possibly, again, I think you could adapt the idea where they fall in love with the creator, like a reverse Pygmalion situation, where that was the idea of an artist falls in love with his sculpture. This could be, you know, he put so much of himself and like so much soul into the sculpture came to life and fell in love with the artist. I guess something I said, I think maybe it was in the Morgana video, maybe it was in the Room Talk video this week. I mentioned how Alan Wake is basically a playable episode of The Twilight Zone, and I think it would work really well as a TV show. Again, I just think a book would be best, me personally. This idea, like the core idea of Doki Doki Literature Club, this also feels like this could be a fucking episode of The Twilight Zone. It probably is. I would be shocked. Anyways, where was I feel like that core idea, I think that's kind of my point, is I feel like that core idea can be expressed in other mediums. But Doki Doki Literature Club does take advantage of the fact that I am a game, I am a dating sim. There's multiple routes. Like, the character who is not happy with her lot in life or with her role in the story is, it's not even that I'm not the main heroine. I don't even have a route. I am literally an NPC in other people's stories. And I'm not okay with that. And then deciding that, okay, if I am in a game and there is this boring, bland-ass, featureless character that is trying to romance these girls, that means there is someone behind the screen trying to do that. That's my target. That's my out. And learning piano. It's a programming to take over the game and all that wacky shit. I love a lot of the wacky shit in Doki Doki, by the way. I think my favorite moment of the game. I don't know if you heard that. The door just kind of like creaked, which it does sometimes. And as I'm about to talk about my favorite spooky moment in the game, I just hear Monica. Sorry, that's gold. I love that. My favorite moment in the game is there's a conversation between the protagonist and Yuri, which also there's a point in Doki Doki, I don't remember when it is, where the protagonist just doesn't speak for a really long part of the game because he's not really a character. He's not important. I just think that's super interesting. Another thing I love, I know I'm getting super sidetracked, is when you look at the character sprites, Sayori's, Yuri's, Natsuki, I could not remember her name for a second. The way they're positioned, I think there's a few sprites that are, like, maybe not quite this, but they're usually, like, at an angle. And Monica's is always, like, facing forward. And not always. I think Monica has a couple where she's kind of at the side. But her base sprite is she is facing forward. And I love that little subtle detail. It's like the others are at an angle, like they're looking at someone else. But Monica is looking at you. So cool. And it's so creepy. But my favorite spooky moment is you're having a conversation with Yuri. And Yuri's like, hey, I need to talk to you about Monica because something's weird and something's going on. And as you're talking to her, Monica's sprite is slowly just getting superimposed on Yuri until she just takes over the screen. And I think she, like, lunges at you a little bit, and then it cuts like, I love that. That's so cool. And, you know, you have to go into the game and delete her file, so it does some real-world stuff. That's my Totono pin with real-world stuff, because holy shit, what the fuck? I love that Doki Doki really does take advantage of its medium with that. And how after Sayori dies, it deletes your saves. And how Monica's like, I gotta get rid of all the other routes so it can just be me. And you have to go into the game's files because it is a game to do stuff with it. Now, even Doki Doki has been adapted. It has been adapted from a PC game to a console game. As there's Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, which I own. It's on my shelf somewhere. I love it. When you play Plus, there's an extra HUD when you bring up the game. So it's like, while you're not playing it at a computer, you're playing somebody who's playing it at a computer. And even right there, I feel like something is lost in translation. Because it doesn't feel quite as personal. It's like, again, Monica can read, if I'm remembering it correctly, because you can name your character whatever the hell. And there's a scene where Monica, like when it's just Monica, and she's just sitting there all smug and all comfortable, and it's like, yeah, I'm talking to you, not him. And then she doesn't use the name you put for the character, unless it's coincidentally the same thing. I believe it's the name of your computer. Because I think I've heard, like, she doesn't even read your Steam name. She reads, like, your computer profile name. So, I mean, obviously, if you make your name, like, Scrody McBurger Balls, it loses all effect. But, like, I remember watching Indie Mouse play it. Shout out to Indie Mouse. I haven't watched one of his videos in a long time, but I went through one of my YouTuber phases where I just, like, watch a person's content for, like, a lot of videos, and I've had an Indie Mouse phase. It makes it sound like it's this emo shit. It's just a phase, Mom. I'm gonna stop watching, but, like, I really like Indie Mouse's videos. I remember watching his Doki Doki Literature Club, and Monica called him Liam. And I remember him saying, he's like, okay, I know what the trick is. I get what's going on. But hearing her actually say my name, not hearing, reading, but it's like seeing her actually say my name, though, is so freaky. And I love that. Even if the core idea can be adapted into other mediums, it really takes advantage of it. And I don't remember how it does it with the console. I think it does something similar. But I don't know. To me, it feels less personal on the console. I will go ahead and shout out the Plus version, though, because it does have that extra content of just the members of the literature club without the protagonist and them dealing with their problems and all of that. I'm like, this is actually, I love this. I think it's great. I could genuinely watch a slice of life show just about these 4 characters trying to navigate their lives and making the best of it. Like, I don't want to say, like, you know, it doesn't need to be a horror story, because I think the horror is great. I genuinely love it as a horror story, but I do love the other aspects of it. But I've said it several times in this no-note ramble. While talking about DDLC, you can adapt its core idea. You can't do that for Totono. I sincerely don't think you can. It's very similar to Doki Doki's. Again, a character, this being Miyuki, a character who becomes aware that they are a character, and realizing that there is someone beyond the game interacting with them and wanting something more and wanting that relationship and becoming attached to the player. But there's more to it than that. At least I feel like there is. And a lot of that is because of Aoi. And it's like one of those words that I'm so bad at pronouncing. It's A-O-I. It's Aoi, I think is how you are supposed to say it. It just, every time I do, I'm like, it does not roll off the tongue well. And I think that's just a me thing. So if I'm completely butchering the name, butchering the way you say her name, I sincerely apologize. But it's because of her. You and me being Miyuki, at least that's how I see it, and her. She is... It's so weird, and it's so cool. I love it. So there's God. And God, in this story, is the amalgamation of visual novel heroines. And Aoi is an avatar of God that exists in this game and will exist in other games with different names and different designs and different personalities. Her role is to collect H-scene CGs because it's a visual novel, because it's a dating sim. And that's something that happens. There are people who want to see what happens in the game, whether you're doing it because you want to see sexy pics, or because you're someone who likes 100% completion, or if you're like, not even for completion's sake, you're like, I just want to see some of the other things the game has to offer. That is what she represents. So she has to romance the protagonists. Plural. Because to her, like, I am not the main heroine of the game. I'm just a side romance option. I have, like, my own route that you're not supposed to play. But I do want to romance you, and then once I've gotten your CGs, I can move on to the next person. I don't know how you adapt that. Because, again, like, it is a visual novel-centric concept. There's a point in the game where Miyuki has trapped both the player and the protagonist, Shinichi, in her love dungeon. I didn't like that. I'll also say I didn't play the 18+ version. I played it on Steam. I didn't know I was playing the censored version. From what I understand, there's a difference. Like, there are scenes that I know about that I didn't get. And, like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to watch it. And I'm glad I didn't have to. But I feel like I was supposed to. But, you know, it is what it is. But anyways. Where first of all, once Miyuki takes over the game, I feel like it's kind of like with Monica. Monica's like, yo, this is what the game is now. There's nothing to save. There's nothing to load. It's just us. Whenever, it's not whenever, but there's a few times like when you bring up the menu, because the font also changes. And like the text font changes, the HUD changes. Like, oh, it's so fucking cool. The title screen changes. There's points where Miyuki will just start talking to you. And it's like, hey, you're not gonna just leave and quit the game, are you? Or you can't save or load anymore. You're just with me. I love it. It's so unsettling. There's this, but the thing I want to talk about, you're trying to get her phone so you can talk to God to get out of here. And, like, Aoi has been deleted. So, again, like how Monica deletes the other characters, Miyuki does the same thing. It's like, you gotta get her Miyuki's phone so you can call God so you can input the right number to bring Aoi back. To call God, because Miyuki's phone is locked, you have to answer her security questions. It'll be things like, what's my favorite ice cream? And there's 3 answers. And why do I love this town? And there's 3 different answers. You cannot use a walkthrough for this because it is randomly generated. It's like there's 30 questions with 3 answers, and every version of the game has different answers. Every Miyuki is different. Every copy of Totono is personalized. You can't adapt that. I love that. Like, that's so interesting to me. And it's something she talks about. She's like, you know, first off, she knew how many, it took me 3 attempts to do it. She's like, I know it took you 3 attempts. 3rd time's the charm, right? But you know what? You did it. And the fact that you did it means that you couldn't have looked it up. You couldn't have used a walkthrough the way that so many people do when playing a VM, because there are people who play these games. And this is not something that she's like directly saying, but I feel like this is the intent. And again, it's like the intent is what you can't truly adapt. There are people who will play these games and use a walkthrough and will just kind of speed through the dialogue, get to the choices, and not make personal connections with the characters in it. And you have to make a personal connection with Miyuki. You have to get to know her, pay attention to her dialogue, so you can answer these questions. Because you can't look it up. You could bullshit your way through it, but if you get 3 questions wrong, you're locked out until it comes back in the loop. Which, if you're lucky, will be quick. If you're unlucky, it'll be like 10 minutes. You have to get to know her. You can't play this the way you play other VNs. Fuck, that's cool. Yeah, it's one of those things, like, when I realized that, I was like, oh, I love this game. I love it so much. The number to bring back Aoi is also different and personalized to every copy of the game, because there are 3 numbers you need. The first number is the God number. That is like God's phone number. Randomly generated. You can't look it up. You have to find it and do it on your own. Cool. Bet. The second number is the reality number. This is the one number that is consistent. Remember how I was saying it's like, it would take the reality, like this fucking pin out. Remember with Doki Doki, it's like, okay, like you have to go into the character files, find Monica's, and delete it. And it's something that she keeps telling you. It's like, yeah, you know, it was so easy to find their character files. All I had to do was this. It's like, I hope you don't think about doing this. She lays it on a little thick, but also it's like, okay, that's probably not something I would have even thought about because of, again, how like fucking weird and meta the game is. I like that there's a hint here. Totono doesn't really give you that hint. It's just like, yeah, I don't remember what they say, but it's something along the lines of, yeah, go find the number, dumbass. What you're supposed to do is look in the game manual, like fucking Metal Gear Solid. Snake, the password, or not the password, it's a codec channel. It's like, it's on the back of the box. And it's literally the back of the box. And I know because in like the fucking digital editions, they don't have a box. It's just one of the images. Because, you know, it's like they'll show like promotional images. One of the promotional images is that, so you can still solve that puzzle. Like, I love that. That's so cool. If I played more Kojima games, I could probably really talk about like how Kojima uses Medium. But I don't really have enough to say about that. You're supposed to look in the game's manual. Steam version doesn't have a manual. I'm like, I literally don't know how I'm supposed to do this. Internet, like, how, what? What you're supposed to do, or like the workaround, is you watch the YouTube trailer for the game, and you look in the description, and at the bottom of the description is this 8-digit number. There is no context for it. It's just, yeah, there's just these 8 numbers there at the bottom of the description, and that's the reality code. So you have to subtract the reality code from God's phone number and add the Miyuki variable. Another personalized number. And it is the amount of times that, in my version of the game, that it's Miyuki's favorite number. It's the one that means the most to her. It's the amount of times you've kissed her. Which, mine was 20? I was like, how is it 20? Like, okay, if it's a kiss, I get the... Huh? I thought we was like 5. Maybe. Anyways, you add the Miyuki variable, and that's the number. And you punch it in, and Ollie comes back, and she and Miyuki have this conversation, and essentially their conversation ends up with, we're going to let the player make their final decision over which girl to pick. Because you are the protagonist of the game. Shinichi is this, I want to call him like Okazaki. Because I read qnother earlier this year, and if you've seen my video on that, I wasn't impressed with it. I love the anime. I think the anime is amazing. The VN, I mean, I'm just talking about the nature of adaptation. I feel like it works far better as an anime, because you're not resetting the route every time, so you can consistently see the progress that the characters are making, and when someone gets, like, you can give someone a happy ending, maybe not their, like, you know, I'm with Okazaki happy ending, but you can give them some sort of happiness and still, like, move forward, because I feel like qnother is all about a story about, you know, it's about family, it's about love, but it's also about progression and like becoming a better person, and it's like great when it does that, and I don't think the VN really accomplishes that, at least from my experience with it, and the anime does it in fucking spades. But anyways, I'm getting off topic. He's this very Okazaki character, because Okazaki's like, you know, like, I hate this town, it's so washed up, and all my friends don't give a fuck. He's like, I hate this town, I don't have any, like, desire to do anything, I don't have any big ambitions, and Shinichi is very similar. But his thing specifically is, you know, Miyuki and I were childhood friends, because of course you gotta have the childhood friend and the tsundere, and then what do you know, you get them both in one character. It's a 2 for 2. It's a 2 for 1. But it's like, yeah, like, I'm not good enough for her, and like, I know she still kind of likes me, but I'm just not good enough, and I don't think I'm worth it, and I wouldn't go after her, and I don't want to go after her. And the fact that she keeps trying and is giving me that lifeline because I really like her, but I can't do it, and it's your actions as the player, your choices that make him do that. And it's your choices in the next route that make him go after Aoi. And Miyuki is aware of this. She remembers that the first route happened. One of my favorite moments of this game. I mean, my favorite moment of the game, if you know anything about Totono, it's exactly the scene you're thinking of. Happy birthday to you. so creepy and it's great. And then when she's like, I'm not talking to you, gets up right in the screen with her dead, expressionless eye. I mean, it's not expressionless, but it's those cold, dead eyes and the blood on her face. I'm talking to you. And I love whenever they're talking to you, it's in capitals. Like, it's so cool. But, unfortunately, like, I saved the game at the start of that scene. It's like, I want to be able to reload this scene and just rewatch it because of how great it is. And then she's like, you can't load or save your game now. Like, damn it, Miyuki, come on. But one of my favorite moments of the game is when you're doing Aoi's route. And Miyuki is like, hey, you believe in eternal love, right? You promise that you do? That you believe in fate, you know, like life is a staircase, right? And, you know, it's not that every choice leads to the next thing. It's that choice doesn't matter. You know, you got to keep going. You can't overthink it. There's no branching paths. And you'll go to where you're supposed to go. And where you're supposed to go is to me. And you believe in eternal love, right? And it's not that Shinichi just says, yeah, I do. The player specifically promises that they believe in eternal love. And Miyuki takes that and goes, okay, I don't like what you're doing with her. I like what's going on. But you love me. You said in the first route that you loved me. And now you are promising me that you love me and that you care about me. And there's a scene later where she's saying that, she's like, you know, I don't remember exactly what the context was. I think they were talking about how Aoi's cheating because she has to collect CGs and whatnot. And Miyuki is saying, like, you know, I can forgive infidelity once. If it happens twice, then you need to be punished. And then when later things happen with Aoi, and oh man, I know it happens in the 18+ version. I'm like, oh, I'm kind of glad I didn't read that. What the fuck? Then you get punished. But back to what happens at the end of the game. You, the player, have the final choice. Aoi or Miyuki. And the characters really, really rub it in that it is the final choice. Life is a staircase. You don't overthink it. Move forward. You don't have the time or ability to regret the choices you didn't make. You get one chance to do this. It is your inability to make that one choice. Because you had chosen Miyuki. You did her route, and you have to do her route to do always. It's like you chose and then fucked around, and then you found out hard. There is no fucking around anymore. Make your choice, and the game will lock. And they even say, it's like, there's other things you could do. You could probably save right here, make your choice, and then load before the game locks and see both choices. You could read a walkthrough and see what happens. You could probably watch the other ending on like a streaming service. But you shouldn't. Because you need to make your choice and you live with it. And you make your final choice. I picked Aoi. I'm not picking Miyuki after all that. Like, I'm sorry. I love Miyuki. Like, I love this character for how genuinely interesting she is. I think she's fascinating. I'm not picking Miyuki after all that, though. And it's like, you know what? She's got Shinichi. And if they can work everything out, and maybe they hopefully can, she's good. Like, I'm going with my homegirl over here. Like, I'm going with Supersonic. I picked her, and I made the conscious decision to not see what happens with Miyuki. I've looked up some other endings that have happened. For example, like, I know there's a bad ending where Miyuki, where Shinichi is trying to do stuff with the phone, and he's not able to, and he hides in, like, a room, and Miyuki, like, rips the door off and murders him, and it's wild. I've seen the hidden ending. I want to talk about the hidden ending. Oh god, I love the hidden ending so much. I picked Aoi, and she talks about how, like, you know, like, I will reincarnate into other visual novel heroines. And from what I understand, she mentions a bunch of Nitro Plus ones. I recognize Sonic. I was like, yeah, I'll be the bassist in an all-girls band. Like, oh, I did, like, the fucking Leo shit. The other ones I didn't recognize, because off the top of my head, the only other Nitro Plus VN I've read is Song of Saya. That's a fun experience, by the way. Thanks, Udobuchi. But, I haven't read others, so I don't know what she was referencing. I'm like, these feel too specific to not be references, and I did check they are specifically references and stuff. I just don't remember what they were. Anyways, she talks about how, like, I will be in other VNs. Like, I will continue. Then the player says, then I will read those stories, and I will find you, and, like, our love will be eternal. Whenever you are hunting for CGs, you'll be hunting them with me. It's not it should have been me, not him. It will be me. I am him. And again, it's that idea of playing a visual novel and saying, like, I am going to keep doing that so I can keep finding you over and over again. I feel like so many of these core ideas of, like, you being the main character and you make this final choice and you cannot play the game anymore unless you uninstall it and reinstall it. And then there's the hidden ending. There is a point in the game where the game explains to you the numbers. You need the God number, you need to subtract the reality number, and you add the Miyuki variable. And then you plug it in. There's a point where you have Miyuki's phone, and you can add the number early. If you add the number early, before the game has even explained it to you, the characters react. Miyuki is pissed, and Aoi comes back, and she's pissed. And I think what she's telling, she's like, please tell me that was an accident. That you guessed that number by complete accident, that it was some cosmic work of fate. Because if not, that means you finished the game and played it again. You made the same mistakes. You played with our feelings. You cheated. Because the first time, you cheated. But maybe you didn't know. And you can be forgiven. But you knew this time. We specifically had you promise that you would choose once and be done with it, and you couldn't own up to that. You fucked around, now you're gonna find out. And the game gives you a countdown. It's like, in 10 seconds, this is going, or like, not necessarily 10 seconds, like, to the count of 0, your game will lock. So either stop the game, or you're gonna suffer the consequences. And I love that. Again, it's the game tells you, this is your one chance. Like, this is your, it's not really your one chance, but like, this is your final choice. Do it once. And if you don't adhere to that, the game calls you out. I love that. I love how there's this bit in Yuki's Love Dungeon, where I think it's like right at the start It can be, I think you have an option to say, like, I love you or I hate you. It's like, I love you or I love Aoi. And if you pick the I love Aoi, it just loops. And you can't do anything, so you have to restart it and go back to the previous choice. She's like, oh, I know what you did, by the way. I know you did that, but it's okay. Because I'm here with you now. And I'm all you need. You don't even need to choose anymore. Oh, you want to choose, or like you can pick options. He's like, what makes you think you actually get a choice? I love you. It doesn't mean I trust you. And you have to raise her affection points so she trusts you. Because again, it's all about what a visual novel is. The love triangle, you can adapt that. That's no problem. One of the characters being super meta with like what Aoi is, like you can adapt that into other things. Even Miyuki addressing the audience, like you can adapt that. You can have characters break the fourth wall. But being a visual novel is so central. Like, you know that thing in fantasy about like a true name, and it's like your true name is like your essence? The true name of Totono is visual novel, because that's what it is. Or I guess it's more apt to maybe say dating sim. I don't think it can be another medium. Way too much would be lost. And again, it's like, it's not even that things would be lost. Like, it doesn't work. I mean, I guess you could have them interact with the audience like in a show or a movie the way that like Dora does. But again, it's not personalized. It's not like they would kind of have to assume this is what someone is picking rather than I am actively picking the choices. I had to actively go for Aoi, which is something Shinichi would never do. I had to actively pursue Miyuki, which is something Shinichi would never do. I had to actively promise Miyuki that I believed in eternal love. I had to actively put in the fucking numbers and choose one of them. I had to get to know Miyuki personally. Not like the concept of Miyuki, which you could do in a walkthrough. This personalized version of the character. I think it's phenomenal. I loved it. Is it my favorite visual novel of all time? No. The Golden Witch is right up there. I mean, she's got this glare on her, so you probably can't see her that well, but I mean, if you were to ask me what is my favorite visual novel, I would just say Umineko. If I have to be more specific, like, you can't just say Sea Cats as a whole. It has to be like, what is your favorite visual novel, like route or like episode of something? It wouldn't even be Sea Cats at that point. It would be Muv-Luv Alternative. Oh god, I love Muv-Luv so much. Totono, to me, I don't like it as much as those two. I don't think I like it as much as Fate either, because I loved it when I finally read Fate. It is a phenomenal story that, like I said, there was kind of this recurring theme this week of me thinking about medium and adaptation. And Totono kind of put like the punctuation mark. I was trying to say the exclamation point, but that is a punctuation mark, so I'm not incorrect. And Fate, just because you're correct doesn't mean you're right. But it kind of put the exclamation point on it, and then I guess the postscript was finishing Alan Wake and then thinking about that too. So I guess this is also my Alan Wake video. I did like it. Again, I think as a game, it's fine. It's good. I think the story is amazing. And like I said, I'm interested in playing the other games and seeing where that story goes. I might have liked it a bit more as a book, though. I think it would have hit me a lot harder. Kind of the way that Totono has, or in some of the ways that even Muv-Luv does. Like, Muv-Luv Alternative really is another thing that takes advantage of the fact that it is a visual novel. That is pretty core to the identity of Alternative once you get into some of those twists, which I'm not really going to go into here. This has been a no-note ramble. I don't know if this is going to be a common trend. It's not the first time I've done it. Clearly, it's not even the first time this week. But it's something I've said on the channel, or at least it's something I've said about the channel. These videos are done in a specific way for a couple reasons. Number one, it's just kind of me, like, taking this, I don't know if diary is quite the right word, but it's just, like, kind of marking my progress in, like, the different media that I'm consuming. And then, like, every Thursday, be like, all right, this is kind of my updates, and then also just some fun personal shit. Etc., etc. But I do them in this way, like this one-take way, where I might have a 7-second pause, or the door might creak, and I get freaked out for it for a second. Because I want it to feel authentic and natural. I want it to feel like you are having a conversation with me, and the no-no videos are the most like that. It is, I gotta talk, it's like the equivalent if I'm like, okay, Clay, I gotta talk about this shit. let me rant. Let me vent. Personally, I do prefer notes, because it also makes me mad that while playing Totono, I took extensive notes on some of the things I really liked about the game. Like, I wrote down some of, like, Miyuki's answers. It's like, yeah, I kind of like to share stuff about my Miyuki, and, well, I wrote them on my phone, and I can't check it because my phone's recording. I guess that's lost in the ether. It's a little frustrating. But it still gets the point across of me marking this piece of media on the channel and being authentic about it. So again, not saying that this is how I'm going to do things going forward. If I'm just like, I've kind of got something and I'm going to go, then I'm going to go. I remember my Ruby Volume 9 video was like that, where I remember I was sitting there in bed, like, it's like 2 in the morning, and I just can't get this season out of my head. Let me just go ahead and talk about it. Instead of writing all the shit down, and again, like, all the notes, like, they meant nothing, but it is what it is. Oh, excuse me, fuck. Thanks for watching. Genuinely, I appreciate it. I think we're good here. I think this is where we're gonna stop it. I'll see you later. I will just genuinely say this. I feel like I probably should. Would I recommend playing Alan Wake? I think so. Would I recommend reading Doki Doki Literature Club? I would. Would I recommend reading Totono? I definitely, like, absolutely fucking would. I was like, oh yeah, I said I was going to reference Raya at some point, and I never did. It's something I've talked about a few times. I know I was right about to end the video, and here we are still rambling. It definitely is a conversation with me. I've said before, while watching Raya, and when I was done watching it, that was a weird way of saying it. When I finished watching Raya for the first time, and on subsequent watches as well, I remember thinking to myself, this feels like I watched a movie adaptation of a really good book. It feels like the core idea is here, it hit the necessary beats, but it feels like an adaptation of a much more fleshed out world and fleshed out story. And it's made me interested to... Oh, what is it, bug? You talking? You coming up? You coming up on the beanbag? But it made me feel like I would really want to read the source material, because I bet it's amazing. And there is no source material. So I feel like, yeah, like, as a show or as a book, I think it would have been way better than it was as a movie. But that's all I had to say about Raya. Would I recommend Raya? I mean, it's only like an hour and a half, so... Sure. Oh, bub, I don't want you going up on there. I don't want you knocking shit over. No, Bahamut, please don't. Please be very careful up there. Okay, I'm going to go and stop this to make sure my cat doesn't knock over, like, my Madoka Maguka figures or the Estelle or the Wren. So, bye.